Do not some scientists or philosophers use science to formulate an argument to reject God's existence? Yes, maybe they do. But that is not a scientific conclusion anymore. It's called an evidential argument. An evidential argument is not a scientific conclusion. It is a philosophical argument that uses some scientific data and tries to philosophize over that data to come to a conclusion that denies God, that denies the divine. It is not a scientific conclusion though, it's an evidential argument. And that's why when some people try and squeeze in or sneak in from the back a scientific argument to reject God, then in reality it's not a scientific argument, it's just scientific data that philosophers or thinkers or scientists use to philosophize over in order to try and form the atheistic conclusions. But that is not a scientific conclusion, it would be called an evidential argument, which is a philosophical argument. So from this point of view, you have to understand that science is relatively neutral from that perspective. It loosely adheres to methodological naturalism, which basically says for any scientific conclusion to be considered scientific, it cannot refer to divine creative power. And likewise, you can't use that conclusion to directly affirm the divine, or even to directly reject the divine. However, theists, people who believe in God, people who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, could look at the observable universe and to philosophize over what they observe to make the conclusions that are true. In other words, that God does exist and that He is worthy of glorification and worthy of praise and worthy of worship. Of course we can. But in order for something to be scientific, then you can't refer to any divine creative power from the point of view of methodological naturalism. And this is why scientific conclusions can't directly affirm and they cannot directly reject God's existence. If you're going to use some scientific data to disprove God, that doesn't become a scientific conclusion anymore, it's an evidential argument. And if you're going to use some scientific data to prove God's existence, that's still not a scientific argument, it becomes a theistic argument for God's existence that is fundamentally philosophical.